Is AI replacing architecture visualization artists? Me and Andy Christopherou, the head of visualization in KPF, are going to go through this in this discussion. However, before we jump into that, Andy has developed a GPT tool that actually gives you feedback on your renders by AI. You can upload your render, it gives you feedback, and then it also rates it out of 5. And on top of that, if you actually rank high as one of the best renders that have been submitted, you also get to win prizes. So go ahead and check it out in the first link in the description. And without further ado, let's jump straight into the discussion. Cool. So do you think ArchViz is dead right now?
Oh, okay. Loaded. Okay, we're going straight into it. Loaded question. No, I don't think it's dead, but I think it's definitely like going to evolve. I think like the days of just like you doing it 100% like freelance or like full time. I think 100% full time might be dead. Just because of like how AI is taking everything over by the storm. But I do think as like an architect or a designer, ArchViz is still a valid skill set to learn. So that's what I mean by evolving. Like I really think architects and designers should still learn this because it makes their lives easier, but they should also learn the AI side of things. What do you think?
I mean, so there's a few things that I want to touch upon on what you just said. Like, I just think there's going to come a point where there's barely going to be any skills that architects need to learn in order to produce images. And that might be sooner than we expected to, right?
Yeah.
Like, what it's going to come down to is just some basic compositioning because the material is already being done by AI. The mood, the light, all of that is already being done by AI. And maybe it's not at the highest level, but it's good enough for most firms. So
Mm-hmm.
what kind of skills are you thinking of in terms of like that you think they still have to pursue at this point?
Right. So I'll bring some context into this. This is like I think AI is really good for like the static image, the one-time image. And yeah, sure, there's like the video stuff with like runway. But I think the one thing that hasn't been solved yet, which is going to be the hardest thing, is like imagine you have a client, they come over, you're having a meeting or even it's a Zoom, and you're flying around in your real-time environment, right? That's
Mhm,
really nice, makes it very immersive and interactive.
mhm,
Right now it's like how do we do that where we can take a image of like the left side of a project and we want to see the right side, and we need that continuity
mhm,
between the two images from like the material standpoint, the lighting, and then just like all the steps in between. Like I feel like that's still missing, and like we can do the single images fine, but carrying all that over, even with like keeping the same seed, it's just like it's not perfect. And I find if it's not perfect, people aren't going to want it or use it. And I feel like the stuff we have right now, it's really good, but we still spend a lot of time just like revising it and doing reiterations of it and like reprompting, and
mm,
it's not perfect. And sometimes it's like maybe it's just easier if I just model and render it versus going through this. Like I think the control and the precision is still the hardest thing that needs to be figured out and
mhm.
resolved.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's gonna come with time, and I think it's a lot sooner than we expected. I remember just like 6 to 8 months ago when we would use these AI enhancers, it would mess up a lot of things. But right now, at least with D5 AI enhancer, 95% of the time it's perfect. Like literally does the job very well. Like there's like this 5% of the time where it maybe turns the asphalt material into cobblestone paving or
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But that's very rare. In terms of like enhancing overall materials, lighting, the balance between shadows and light, it's honestly doing all of that so good. That's still just one portion of the
Right.
ArcViz process. But I think it's getting to the point where ArcViz still images are becoming a commodity, and in a very short time, every ArcViz firm, no matter if it is a big one with like 2 3,000 employees or a one man band, is going to have realistic renders accessible by pressing a few buttons, if not just one button. That's at least what I predict. But I think there's room to make a difference for a period of time in terms of video walkthroughs and virtual reality. I think that's a differentiator that architects are going to try to make between their competition. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I just think that ArchViz agencies as a whole, I see this as a battle royale basically. So there's going to be like 98% or like the 95% of ArchViz professionals, I think, are going to come to a point where they're going to quit.
Yeah, I think okay. All right. So a lot there. So I think there's a couple things. Like I think there's such, at least in architecture, there's such a big lag in terms of like a new thing hitting the market and actual implementation. Like if we think about like architecture firms still using AutoCAD when there's still so many amazing tools out there, and like AutoCAD was invented, how many decades ago, and like they're still on it. They're not accepting BIM, and like that's it. And I wonder if we're going to see the same thing with AI. Maybe it's a time thing where they just like don't have the time to learn the tools, they don't have the skill set, or they just don't want to bother with it. I feel like it could be something like that where you're still going to need people that know what's going on. Like that one band shop might not even know about this AI stuff because they're just like so old school, right? And even with the larger firms, I still think they're going to need, people that know this stuff because they're not going to be able to train everyone 100%, and they just need
Mhm.
someone dedicated on this.
Yeah,
So I think that's where it's going to evolve.
but I mean, you basically run a big department of like visualization in a large architecture firm,
Right.
and I mean, I personally see this trend that architecture firms that actually have the budget to outsource usually build very good in-house teams, right? Or at least that's my perceived vision of how I see things. Where do you think is the middle point of the size of architecture firms where they actually are going to be too small to hire in-house, uh, but maybe they might also get too big to outsource in a way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like there's a couple of trends we've noticed. It's like we like this idea of potentially like outsourcing less, like because of
Yeah.
AI and like how good D5 is getting, like being able to do more images in house is in theory cheaper because we could generate a bunch of different images. We don't need to pay, several thousand for just one image. So there's definitely like a cost savings there. And like our approach is to try and teach the designers and architects how to use these tools.
Mhm.
So it's not that we have like a dedicated specialist that just does like AI stuff all day. I mean, I guess that's like me, but really my opinion is like it's better to just educate people to do this and add it to their skill set. I think for like smaller firms, like I don't like let's say less than 10 people, the idea is either they're using it or they're not, or it's like they're learning it, maybe they learned it at a previous job or they're interested in it. Like I don't know if the dedicated person will exist at that small size. I think it's same thing with like the rendering stuff. You hire somebody new, they figure this out at an earlier job, they bring it to the firm. I think it's gonna be the same thing with AI. It's just like an extra skill set, and that's what they're bringing to the firm. For larger firms, I mean, we're like 500 people, and like we don't have like a super large like Viz team because it's just easier to train the architects to do this, and it's better just from a workflow point of view because they're able to have that direct connection with the client. There's no miscommunication between departments and everything. So I think
Mhm.
it's going to vary, but I think it's just like drafting. Like everyone should learn how to do that. Same thing with 3D modeling. They should still learn this. Like I think it's just another thing to be added. I don't think it's going to kill 3D modeling completely. I think the part of architecture that we can't forget is like the design part is three-dimensional, and like we need to be in these spaces, and I don't think AI is going to be able to take that
Mhm.
component away.
That's interesting because I personally think that the amount of people that will be required to be specialized in visualization is going to drop dramatically. Like even right now, a lot of firms, I'm not saying like the large ones, but like small to mid-sized, do not have someone specific only to ArchViz but there's like architects are already renderers in a way, right? Because they just plug
Agreed.
in a tool like Enscape D5, and with just a few tweaks that maybe take 20 to 30 minutes, they can come up with a good enough render. Now, I'm not saying that it is like world class render. It's not like mirror renders or all these other very, very high end visualizations,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just good enough,
Yeah.
right?
I
Like,
think that's the trend, and that's kind of what we're seeing too. Like we don't need like the super high quality, super polished outsourced
yeah.
rendering every single time. Like it's good here and there, but like for typical day-to-day stuff, the in-house stuff is getting just as good, you know, maybe 80-90% of that quality. Like
Mhm.
I think that's good for architects, bad for ArchViz. And
Yeah.
that's why I was saying, like, I don't think being a full time, you know, ArchViz artist is going to be super feasible, because I think that scope is going to belong to the
Yeah.
architects and designers,
100%.
unless, of course, there's those situations where the architects just don't have the time and somehow it's easier for them to outsource it and have someone else worry about it. But I think that is dying,
Mhm.
definitely.
And what do you think an ArchViz artist should be doing right now to adapt and maybe pivot?
I mean, they should definitely understand the AI stuff, because I think the AI consultant is going to be a big thing. So we have like our visualization consultant. I think the AI consultant is going to be the next big thing, because again, not everybody's going to learn how to do that. But I also think they should think about like what is tangential to ArchViz that they could get into. Like I do think learning architecture, and like, you know, whether you go to school or not for it, is definitely an easy you know, I guess profession, or close enough that someone should look into. But it's also one of those things. It's like architecture is also in a tricky spot, because it's a brutal profession. It doesn't really pay that
Mhm.
well. But then there's like real estate, and then, you know, there's construction. Like I think pairing with those agencies and like being part of those types of shops is probably more feasible than being a viz artist 100% of the time. Like that's a hard thing to do, especially like if the global economy, you know, tanks. But yeah, I think being somebody's viz department in a way, again, construction or architecture, I think there's still value there.
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just want to make it completely clear. Like, I do not want to sound pessimistic because I'm generally someone that always thinks that I'll figure it out. Things will go smooth. It's just that I'm trying to be realistic in this instance because I generally think that right now it is a key moment for a lot of people to pivot before it actually goes downhill.
Yeah,
Unless
and
you are the top 0.1% in terms of visualization, unless you're like Mir level or Brick Visuals or like those top firms. I think this is generally a good time to pivot. I recently read a book by Seth Godin, The Dip. I'm
mhm.
not sure. Yeah. I mean, that is just a perfect situation where you should dip out and cash in the chips that you've got from your past experiences. Right. So I think right now it is at that point where you can kind of leave before the storms hit. Um, or at least that's how I am seeing this.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and I'll go back to the quality thing. Like I do think the good enough, the 80-90% of photorealism is definitely good enough. The leaving part, leaving the profession 100%, like that I don't know, that is tough, because, you know, you were saying this earlier about like getting into interactivity. I think that's also like an also very good pivot. I think like the world of Unreal Engine has got like 500 different professions in it, and I think that's also valid. But that's also dipping into the world of like programming, and, you know, programming is also at risk. But it's tough because, you know, it's like you have AI and it can do all these magical things, but I always like think of when I'm working with clients, like there's just some clients that I can never imagine them just sitting there and like prompting and like doing all this without having a professional to talk to. And I think that's the one thing that like AI can't take away. And like we say this for architects all the time, like no way AI can take an architect's job, because there's like legal ramifications for like our job. We have to protect the health and safety. Like that can never be offloaded to AI. Like that's just dangerous. And so one thing, you know, I've always been thinking about is like, what is the equivalent of that in ArchViz? You know, it's like, how do you protect the health and safety of people in ArchViz? Like what's comparable? So that to me is like, I think one of the answers. But I feel like with ArchViz, you know, there's so much time and education that people have already spent in this, like, you know, learning how to 3D model, composition, photography, all these engines, and then just to like drop it, you know, maybe it's sunk cost fallacy, but it just, that just seems so hardcore. In my opinion, if I were in that situation, I would just learn Unreal Engine like a pro and see if I can get into like film or like automotive or something, like an industry that's got, you know, a little bit more meat than architecture, because architecture is just notorious for like cheap budgets and harsh deadlines. And so I'm not ready to jump the ArchViz ship 100%. I do think it needs to be tweaked a bit, and like I still think architects and designers should learn it, but I'm not saying jump.
You know, like for me, I'm actually on the verge of jumping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super on the verge of jumping, and honestly, I do not mind starting all over, because for me, it never really, like the ArchViz skills were never really the whole point. Like for me, the whole point was learning how to create content, learning how to create accessible tutorials that people can learn easily from, learning how to market, learning how to sell, all these transferable skills to something else, which I think content creation helps a lot with, which I totally understand that not everyone is in the position that we are in terms of like creating content and finding the time to um, share whatever we know about the software and all that. But I think most people shouldn't be scared to quit and maybe start in something, as you were saying. I think the Unreal Engine path is something very viable for most people.
Right.
I don't think that going directly to something which has no correlation, like pharmaceutical or any kind
Right.
of industries that has your correlation, would be a smart move. Um, I honestly think even the energy sector is not too far off uh, in terms of, in ArchViz you're serving architects, and architects are dealing a lot with energy regulations and all of the sustainability codes. And at the same time, energy engineers are kind of uh, not as digitized, if I may say, as the kind of same struggles that architects have. And I just do not see it as something super far off from the architecture profession or the architecture industry. But I mean, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Do you personally plan to pivot to something else, or how long do you plan to do this for? Because I personally do not see myself retiring at 65 from basically doing 45 years of ArchViz.
Yeah. I don't have any plans to ditch it. I mean, I started all this like in the world of architecture. You know, I went to architecture school, I got licensed. I went through that whole process. And ArchViz has always been something I really loved. I mean, same thing with game design, and that's actually how I got into Unreal Engine, and I started learning it. And I think it's like one of the most incredible, you know, tools out there. And I feel like there's just so much Unreal Engine could do. And like I was saying earlier, like there are so many different professions that can come out of Unreal Engine, just like knowing it in all these different industries. Like if anything had to change on my end, like I would probably go more into that and like learn, you know, not only the art side, but also the technical side, you know, whether it's like technical art or like even the blueprinting and all that. And then that way I could do more interactivity stuff. Like I think that's great. And the configurators, that kind of stuff, that tech, like that's here to stay. Energy is interesting because it's like we do have like a sustainability team at our firm, and it's like the work they do is like extremely valuable. It helps optimize buildings. It's great. The one issue, and I feel like this has got to be something that needs to change like on a governmental level, is like having that be a requirement. there's definitely some European countries where it's like
Yeah.
100% a requirement. At
Yeah.
least in the US, it's like if you do a really good job with it, you get, LEED certified and everything.
Yeah.
And like you get a nice little plaque and the building performs better,
Yeah.
but it's not like deeply rooted
No, no.
into,
Yes.
the welfare of like people's lives. Like
Yeah, I
if it's
totally
at
understand.
that
And
point,
I
then
don't
I
think it
agree.
should, to be honest, because I think a lot of these regulations that are happening in Europe with energy are kind of one of the factors that is causing a big housing crisis. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic. Unreal is definitely an option that a lot of artists could pivot to. But I mean, generally speaking, what would be the I guess spark, or what would need to happen for you to pivot? Like, when would you consider actually, okay, this is starting to look real scary, the demand for art is dropping dramatically? How do you think you will be able to identify if it ever comes to that point?
I mean, I would say, um, and I'm totally paraphrasing here, but there's like this great like Warren Buffett story of like when he knew to jump out of a certain stock when the shoe polisher started talking about that stock. That's when he knew it was the moment. And that's kind of how I feel with the at least the smaller architecture firms. And this was like that technical lag I was talking about earlier, that I think small and medium sized firms like just don't have the time and resources to learn this. Again, I'll use the AutoCAD example because there's some people that will just never leave AutoCAD, and like that's that. And I feel like we're going to see, whatever the AutoCAD is of this current generation in the future. And I just feel like as long as I'm learning what's new and trendy, I'll be okay. I mean, like 10 years ago, I was really invested in VR, and like that was great. Learned a lot there, learned Unreal Engine through that, and that's still valuable. I understood like the interactivity thing. Now it's like the AI stuff, and like learning that and like keeping up with it is exhausting, but it's also what keeps the profession semi fresh. And like, I don't think there's any, like, realistically, I don't think there's any scenario where I'm like, hey, I'm quitting architecture and ArchViz and I'm going to go become a plumber or something. Like, I
No,
think that
no.
is like 100% off the table. It's got to have some sort of, tangential profession. Like, if I go into, automotive, because I've always had an interest in like cars and manufacturing, and that makes sense, but I don't think I could ever switch to something 100% unrelated. And then I also have like the education background, and I know that's gonna, and same with you, it's like that's different from most people. But worst case scenario, it's like I wouldn't mind being a professor full time. I've been doing it for so many semesters and I enjoy it, but it would be related to architecture or ArchViz. I
Hmm.
think visualization and like marketing is always going to be a thing because visualization is just a small subset of marketing. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think it can go away 100%. Like, I think any normal person will be able to start doing it, but I think we're going to see like really crappy AI renders, and then the people who really know what they're doing making a lot of money and making beautiful work. And we see that with every single profession.
Yeah.
Bad
I mean,
drafters, good drafters, so on.
but yeah, I think that's definitely valid, and I totally see your point of view. It's just that for me, it always comes down to this. I mean, I totally get that you're never going to be in the best possible business or earning or ROI opportunity. But generally speaking, if someone was optimizing for that, would you recommend ArcViz to them?
If they were optimizing, then they would never be looking at ArcViz. They
Yeah.
they would probably be like a finance bro or something. That's yeah, yeah. I feel like if you're trying to optimize, like, if I could go back in time, okay, advice for everyone. If I could go back in time, I would love to have leaned a little bit more into like software. Software, it's just something super scalable. Because the one thing that ArchViz artists always struggle with is like it requires a lot of like time for us to produce our work, and like a lot of people charge hourly, and like the whole point of like scaling with software is like you build the thing once, you optimize it so it can support a lot of different users, you can have a million users, and like you're good to go. Think about like OpenAI, like they have one product or multiple products and they've got billions of users, right? And they don't have like a billion tech support people, like they have a small team like that. that is super scalable, that is super optimized. Like,
Yeah.
think of all the billionaires in the world. Like, it's either through software or it's through some sort of real estate investing platform. So
Yeah,
if you were to optimize,
most
that's
of
the
the time
route.
it actually is software. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I've always thought to myself, and I've always told to other people that are in the industry, one of the only ways that could stamp, like, that could 100% decide for me that I would be in this industry for a very long time would be owning a piece of a software which I truly believe in, which right now it's only one, and I think we both know which one is. If I had like part equity in a software like, I don't know, DeFi, I think that would 100% push me to really 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 stay in this industry, because I truly believe I would have a lot to contribute to a community like that, and to get behind a product which is that good. Like, I've had in a lot of talks about starting my own software. I've not closed the door yet. It just is so hard to compete, or to find another to develop another product which would be levels above what D5 has.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you maybe could get better than D5 in a feature or two, but just overall getting better at them, like steps, or like remarkably better than them, would be super super hard right now, if not almost impossible.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I make this joke, and it's not that great, but I've always thought D5 is the better twin motion. And what I mean by that is, like, it's built the back end, some portion is Unreal Engine, both of them, right? And obviously D5 has modified the back end a lot, but it's the same idea. They both started with a similar back end. They optimized it for architects and designers, but D5 has completely ran with it. And they've been going at it not for like a long time. Twinmotion's been around for like a long time. Like, before the Epic acquisition, like, it was a not so great real-time renderer. It was awful. It's gotten a lot better now. I'm not talking about current version, previous version, but it does take a couple of years of maturity, and like, we're talking about like hundreds of developers to get to that point. So we're talking about like 5 years and 100 plus people working on that to make something better than what Twinmotion is. And like, that's a lot. Like, I would love to own some equity in D5, because I believe in the vision. I love what they do. Everyone who follows my channel knows how much I love it. But I think D5, or just ArchViz in general, like, if we look at the grand market, is just like such a small, like, little raindrop, compared to something like OpenAI, right, where that can
Oh,
affect everyone, or like
oh,
a
100%.
Facebook, or like a
I
TikTok.
wasn't
Like,
even thinking of something like that. Like, my mind went a lot smaller than that still. But yeah, I mean, if you compare it to them, it's nothing.
yeah, yeah. So it's like the world of like if you really want to nail that optimization, like, yeah, I'm sure DeFi people are making a lot of money, but there's so many more markets that are so much larger than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Construction and AEC does make a big aspect of that, but I think it's so much smaller than like automotive and film, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing other companies kind of trying to pivot to like VFX, and I think Chaos is doing like the Chaos Arena and this kind of stuff. Nonetheless, one thing that I like to mention, just for the viewers here, you mentioned AutoCAD, that people still use AutoCAD. Autodesk still to this day, I think, makes around 400 million per year from AutoCAD, which is
Mhm.
absolutely insane. How much has the software changed for the past 10 to 15 years? I think probably nothing. And
I
it
know,
just
but this is
generates
my
an
point. People don't
insane
move
amount of
on.
revenue.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's so many AutoCAD users out there, and it's just that's my point. I just think it's like, people have been using it for so long, they don't want to jump to anything new, and like, the world of 3D is like very scary to them. And like, maybe with future generations where they didn't grow up having to use AutoCAD, it goes away. But yeah, it's really bizarre that Revit never like overtook like AutoCAD market share. And like, Revit has its own flaws. I totally understand.
I've
I think
never.
it's insane they don't
Wait,
have a proper drafter. But
wait.
anyways,
So Revit doesn't make more money than AutoCAD?
I mean, we should probably fact check that, but I feel like,
That's
I mean,
yeah.
let
I
me
mean, if
let's see if
that's
this is
true, that's
available.
actually crazy. Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
gonna search that up right now.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's look that up and then let's see. Okay,
yeah,
how does this grow it? Estimate to be 35.67. So there's, again, it's also hard to like see like
yeah. It's
I don't
hard
know
to
if any of
compare,
this data is
but
real.
yeah, I think it should be available in Autodesk's financial statements.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just like a 100-page document, which I'm not willing to go through right
Yeah.
now. But yeah, yeah, definitely. As a conclusion, what would you recommend ArchViz artists to do in order to hold through this whole craziness of AI?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they just have to be on top of the trends. I think and it's I don't know, I feel like every profession has just got to be on top of the latest and greatest, and like AI has got so much overlap with ArchViz, and like it will make your life easier, and like you should definitely pay attention to that. It was the same thing with VR and all this interactive stuff. Like you should be paying attention to that because that is what's going to help you differentiate yourself from all the other competitors. And then if you're not doing this full time and you are working at a firm and you're an architect or a designer, like I still think learning those skills brings value to the firm, because if they don't have that skill set, if they don't know how to render or do VR or anything, like that's a huge value add for you. Like the reason I got into my position is because I understood everything about Viz and AI, and then we basically created a role just for that. It never existed because
Mhm.
5 years ago none of this stuff existed.
Mhm.
So I really think um, it's you gotta keep your eyes open. And if you're really sick of the profession, then ditch it. But I don't think it's 100% like clear ditch. I think it has to be tangential, or otherwise I feel like I would have, if I did that, I'd be devastated inside. Like I went through 5 years of architecture hell. It took me forever to get licensed, and like the thousands of hours and dollars I spent to just like drop all that to go be like a plumber or something. It's
No,
I
I think
That would shatter me.
yeah, I think I'm the total opposite, to be honest.
I don't think anyone should go to school for this kind of stuff. I think it's
For
like
artists,
ArchViz. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't pay for a 4 year degree in this unless I was planning to go into like film or something. Yeah, yeah. I would not.
definitely not. That would be hell. Hell, absolutely. Like I haven't done like any formal education in ArchViz, but yeah, that would I would hate that, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. I think like outside of ArchViz, those skills are transferable, but I would not go to school for this because it is really like something you could learn. Plug here between both of our channels. Like we cover a lot of this stuff. Like that's how we all learned. We learned
Oh
from
yeah,
online resources. Like this is not something you need to go to school
no,
for
no, no,
sure.
no, 100%, 100%. I think the list of things that you do not need to go to school for is increasing. Generally speaking, not only ArchViz, but there's a bunch of stuff that you do not need to go to school for in
Yeah,
order to be very good at. But
absolutely.
one thing that I would say though, this is maybe not applicable for ArchViz, but generally, if you have the opportunity to go to a very good school, university, or something which is like, um, I guess, higher end, it might be worth it for the networking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I literally just gave a business webinar talk the other day about like, business of ArchViz, and
Mhm.
like just looking at all the projects I've done in like the past decade, it's something crazy, but like over 90% of those projects came through my network
Mhm.
rather than like from strangers. It's just
Yeah.
like word of mouth, and your network is like the most important thing. So yeah, like I've had classmates reach out and like say, hey, I'm working at this firm, we need some renderings done, can you help us out? Like that's great there. Coworkers, past coworkers, like yeah, definitely keep your bridges intact.
Yeah. 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 100%.